We now take you to the broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here is Reverend Martin.
Thank you, Dr. Blackwell. And let me say Hotep Abaragani for my Africana Studies people. And let me say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but certainly never good night and never ever goodbye, because I find goodbyes traumatizing. My name is the Reverend Nathaniel Wayne Martin. I'm the pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church right here in the city of Los Angeles, and we're located at 8916 South Main Street. That's 8916 South Main Street. And we welcome you to come and worship with us at any and all times. Matter of fact, we're having service tonight, Friday night, which is Evangelism Night, and we encourage the worshipers or parishioners to exercise their God-given gifts, spiritual gifts, within bounds and within reason. You have to always put caveats like that out today, because some people just take the unfair advantage. Those of you that have been around church any length of time, you know what I'm talking about. But that is open tonight, and we usually have Bishop Edwards to preach, and we invite you to come and share in that service. That's tonight, Friday night. And then, of course, we have Sunday school on Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. And then our morning worship will begin around 11:15 or as soon after 11 a.m. After the 10 o'clock Sunday school hour has passed as possible. And that's why I said the general rule is 11:15. And then again, we're there on Wednesday nights for a very deep dive into our Bible study. And if you're planning to grow in the ministry or grow in your Christian walk, you need to be in a good Bible study. And I think we have one of the best in the nation, in the country. And you should come by and worship or bring your Bible. That's where you can ask questions and have questions answered in the Spirit and with the Bible, in the Bible. And it can get quite lively at times, but of course the Spirit of God will take precedent. That's Wednesday night, beginning at 7 o'clock for the prayer meeting, and then we begin Bible study as soon after the prayer meeting as possible. And usually we can start the Bible study around 7:30 or 7:45. But it's usually scheduled to start at 8. So if you get there by 8 o'clock, you're still in a good time. And Dr. Adela F. Holliness is our teacher. And we welcome you and encourage you to come and share. Bring your Bible questions, and and stay prayerful. All right. The offering that you are currently viewing is entitled "It's Time." And someone should always ask, what is it time for? And it is always time for social justice. And since social justice is such a broad topic, we narrow it down to environmental effects in the weather, in the climate, in the atmosphere, as well as the societal environment. Can't leave that out, because that's how we answer the question, is it nurture or nature that makes some people commit crimes? Or is it nurture or nature that makes some do good? And we come to find out that it is the social environment in all of its manifestations, whether it's the proximate, the distal, or the like. But above all, you must have God in your environment, because once you put God consciousness in your environment, then there's always a chance for something good to occur in your life. You can't control the weather. We've damaged the climate, and we've damaged and polluted the ground and the air and the earth is vomiting us out again. And but we do exercise the power of prayer, and prayer changes things, and a God consciousness in a society brings about good things. So we always have to be conscious. Keep God in your environment. Yes, he controls the weather, he controls the climate, and he'll help you negotiate and deal with your society. You have wealth of examples and paradigms from the past and the present to research and to emulate or copy or imitate. So we encourage you not to be despondent about the way things are, but to look toward the future, be prayerful, and by all means, the African word imani, which means have faith or be faithful, as the application may present itself. Okay? All right. Now we are looking on the television and hearing in the news from Greg Abbott in Texas and DeSantis in Florida, that they don't want their children to suffer embarrassment or have feelings of guilt or to feel anywise inferior because of the teaching of true history. In other words, they don't want you to teach history as it actually happened. They want to teach you a Eurocentric version of lies, which Carter G. Woodson termed in a colloquial phrase a miseducation. Miseducation of the Negro was the book that he wrote, and it's miseducation of the general public in particular. I bring all of that up because they are couching it in the behind the veil or the disguise that they just want to avoid CRT. They don't want you to teach critical race theory. Well, critical race theory is not taught in school. It's taught in college, in graduate school, upper graduate school at that. But because critical race theory is a discipline and a research that has brought forth some unsettling conclusions, the most prominent of them being that race is a social construct, and that racism is created and maintained by and supported by a racial hierarchy that is supported by institutional power. And that's a lot of words to say that racism is institutionalized in every one of our systems, whether it's the first estate through the fourth estate, is racist. And whether you're talking about the institution of the church or the institution of the government or the institution of education or the institution of the legal system, all of those institutions are racist. They're racist in their formation and they're racist in their application. And that is a conclusion of critical race theory. And that is why it is being pushed back against by the revisionists, the historical revisionists. I don't know what they're pushing against, because the Constitution upheld slavery, even though it didn't use the word slavery. It talked about persons held to labor or involuntary servitude. And you're not going to get around that. Racism was endemic in the Constitution. It took a war to get that out of the Constitution. And it is still in the hearts of so many in this society who want to, as Donald Trump says, make America great again, go back to the good old days of doing things. And in line with that, I was struck by one of the lecturers, Africana Studies lecturer, and I welcome you to look at his video. I think he has books out as well, Dr. Molif Asante. And I wrote down a few of his observations. In here, and for one thing, he says power determines the conditions for the interpretation of reality. Now we need to unpack that. Power determines the conditions. Who got the power sets the condition. Whether it's in a church meeting or it's in a legal proceeding or it's in a legislative body, who has the power determines the conditions for the interpretation of reality. And if you go back to your Psychology 101 days, you remember they taught you the definition that a person's perception is their reality. And one of the things that this society has done was impose its perceptions on the entire body of people. The ruling power, whether through education or miseducation, through propaganda and otherwise, because we got a lot of propaganda, examples of propaganda right now that are extant. One of them being the big lie, the big steal, which is being propagated still by the Trumpites, saying that the Biden and Trump election was stolen. And you might add to that that it's in Florida that they are now have arrested 20 people on the felony of voting fraud. And you must remember that you need not think any further back than Catherine Harris, the Secretary of State for the Florida election in Bush v. Gore, and notice that she purged 175,000 people illegally off of the roll. Well, they weren't allowed to vote, in other words. But subsequently, they were put back after Bush had won, had been declared the winner. As you remember, the no less an erstwhile body or institution, so to speak, of the U.S. Supreme Court intervened in Bush v. Gore to stop the voting and declared Bush the winner of the election, and Al Gore wouldn't contest it. He bowed to the institution, since he was a great beneficiary of the institution. He was heavily invested in fact, I think his father owned Occidental Oil, and so he wasn't going to invite the rock the boat or bite the hand that had fed him and his family for all of the years of this criminal enterprise we call the United States of America. So power determines the conditions in which reality, for the interpretation of reality. And Dr. Mosef Asante, and I'm going there because of the impact of CRT and the anti-CRT people in Texas and in Florida and all over the United States, because it's not confined to the South. It's up in Wisconsin. They got anti-CRT teachings in Pennsylvania. And what this is an attempt to control the narrative, to push back. You gain an inch of ground, but then there's always a backlash, and that pushes you a mile back from where you were. And so that is what is occurring in education. Keep in mind that education is how most of us advance in this society. They say you work hard, study hard, you'll get ahead, if you can believe that. And I always say that if working hard was all it took, every slave would have been a millionaire. All right, so it ain't just working hard. And but always they get you on this treadmill, going back to school, going back to college, going back to get this, going back to get that, getting this master's or getting this bachelor's or getting this PhD in this subject. And what you really get into is a whole lot of debt. That's one thing you're going to have. Whether you get the degree or not, you're going to have the debt. And doctors talk about $100,000 worth of debt. And many people who are not doctors have $250,000 worth of unpaid school debt. And believe me, they put that debt on your credit rating. That debt is against you when you get ready to go buy your first house or your first car. Whatever you're going to get, if you're going to get a television, that debt is going to be reflected as soon as they run your credit. So you got to at least keep up the appearance that you're paying your minimum due on your student loans. And mind you, that is an addition to life. All the other expenses and bills and obligations that you accrue in life, that student debt is like an anchor weight around your neck, dragging you down, holding you down. And President Biden is to be applauded for at least making a punt in the right direction. He said he forgave up to $10,000 worth of student debt, and if you had a Pell Grant attached to it, then you would get another $10,000 in loan forgiveness. And of course, that is a big help for a lot of people. But I think he said it was 95% of those who have student loans, which is 43 million Americans. And so you can't sneeze at that. However, as we say, the purpose why you accrued all that debt was because you saw your lack and your need to further your education in order to advance your career. You want to advance in your job. You want to advance in your position. And it looks good on your resume or in your record to say, well, look here, we got a college graduate in here. And even if it's in education, Lord help you if it's in English or biology, because you don't make no money in English and biology. Lord help you. But the bigger point is that they really don't want to teach us a valid education. And of course, I think it was William Rehnquist and Justice Antonin Scalia. They were two bigots on the Supreme Court there. And in case of Bush v. Gore, they said there was no right to universal suffrage. It's not in the Constitution. They said that the amendment says that you have you shall not be infringed or impeded, but it does not say that there is a universal right to vote inherent in the Constitution. Where I'm going with that, there's no universal right in the Constitution for you to get an education. That is not in the Constitution. Your education and your voting are not what you call that positive rights. It's not a positive law. It is an implied or inferred law, as the application or non-application of it may be. And when you got conservatives like Clarence Thomas and what's his name, Gorsuch, and all of that ilk on the Supreme Court, then you have no right to an education in this country. Even though all of them are educated, PhDs, you understand what I'm saying? And they're teachers, they're professors, but you can't get in their classes because you don't have that kind of money. You don't have that kind of clout. If they're only going to teach at big colleges. Matter of fact, this year Clarence Thomas has demurred from teaching at Georgetown because of the protest connected with his vote to overthrow Roe v. Wade. Be that as it may, in the limited education that we are receiving, they want to now censor the books. They want to censor the curriculum. Mind you, he wasn't getting a first-rate education in the first place. I've learned more since I got out of school than I learned while I was in school. When I was in school, I thought Columbus was a hero. When I got out of school, I learned Columbus was a thug. Hey, when I was in school, I thought the Opium Wars was a noble attempt by the civilized world to keep China from exporting opium. Only to find out when I got out of school and started doing actual reading and research that it wasn't that China was trying to get it out, it was that the British were trying to put it in. And that is why they went to, that's why they had the Opium Wars, because China would not open up their gates and let the British poison their people with that opium. And as an aside, the wars in Afghanistan about opium, the poppy trade is booming. All right, but let me get back to what I'm talking about. The essence of an education is to lead you from ignorance into the light. That's what educate means when you break it down into its constituent parts. Educate, care, educare. And that means to lead someone from where they are into the light. Lead them into the light. That's what you do with an education. That's what an educator does, he or she. Isn't that right? And I've had more female teachers that took an interest in me coming up in my school years, and I have a debt that I cannot pay because they took up so much time teaching me. You know, that they learned me to love Shakespeare and to read his sugared sonnets, and you know, all of that. Well, of course, that's an aside. That's neither here nor there. The point is that it was a Eurocentric based education, and you out there that are looking at me or listening to me, that's what you have. You have a Eurocentric education, and you need to get, if you're African, then you need to get an Afrocentric education along with that Eurocentric education. And what we mean by an Afrocentric education is a perspective or idea that African people must view themselves and must be viewed in a historical context. And I say that because when we were taught history, we were not taught black history. We had some courageous teachers, don't get me wrong, who would tell us about some of our people, but they didn't go into the depths that you go into when you really start to dig, you know. Eurocentric history starts with Greece, but Afrocentric history starts with the pyramids. And the Iliad of Homer was written back in 800 AD, whereas the pyramids were built 2,800 years before Homer, for the Iliads, before the Odyssey. So if you're going to, all right, 5 minutes. So if you're going to be an educated person, then you need to go back further than 800 AD. You need to go back, since we know that civilization started in Africa. That's a scientific fact. It was brought to my attention again. I don't know why we have to be reminded of these things by no less a person nowadays than Dr. Asante. But you take John Henry Clark, you take, who's deceased, or a Professor Greg Carr, who's chairman of Africana Studies up there at Howard University. Or you even take a Dr. Gerald Horn, who teaches history at University of Houston. You cannot have a grounding in history if you only start with the Middle Ages. Because it wasn't just what was Greece doing, it was what was China doing and what was Africa doing. You know, the world didn't start with Europe, the world started with Africa. But when 800 AD, China was way older than Greece. And Africa was way older than China. So then if we're going to be historians, let's be historians. If we're going to teach truth, then let's get the truth. And that is the only thing that CRT, critical race theory, is pushing into the face of the academic elites, is that you have neglected 3/4 of the world's history. Because you situate everything in Europe, everything in Greece, and you cannot get and they don't even teach that the Greeks spent all their time down there in Africa in the libraries of Egypt. They renamed them, called them Alexandria and all that kind of stuff. But that doesn't hide the fact that that was somebody else's intelligence that they were gleaning after having conquered those the Egyptians. And so you couldn't keep a Greek out of the libraries in Egypt once they discovered them. Those myths, those are African, reconstituted African myths. They were not original with the Greeks. And someone also brought up the fact that the Pacific Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean, you know, those oceans were there before the Greeks. And so, but when Europe conquered the world, then their cartographers renamed everything. But what was the Atlantic Ocean before it was called the Atlantic Ocean? Or what was the Pacific Ocean before the Greeks renamed it the Pacific Ocean? What was it when it was on the continent of Africa? My time is up. All right, y'all. I remind you that we have a job to do. We're trying to get some union work done. You got to have the union, because if you put your labor out there, you cannot get it back. And I'm going to tell you in closing, if you're working for somebody and they don't want to pay you, don't work for them. We out of here, Doc.